Welcome everyone to the final meeting of 2022 for the Lacey Equity Commission. We have an agenda in front of us. We have 4 commissioners present and 3 commissioners online. Welcome Elenis, Christine, and Mercator. Thank you. We have a quorum, so we can proceed. Let's do so by approval of the agenda, previous meeting minutes, and consent items. Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the agenda, previous meeting minutes, and the consent items.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda and the meeting minutes from November 28th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Thank you. For public comment, we have no one in the room with us in person. We see no one by Zoom. We know of no one on the phone. Am I right? I received no new emails as far as comments to the commission. Therefore, we have no public present with us tonight. So with that, I'll move into the inspirational item. The whole year had gone by and I had not taken on that task as the inspirational item. And this is my final meeting as the chair. And so when we were talking about it, I said, I'll do it. I'll do it. Let's not let the whole year go by and I not get the inspirational item in. So let me take a few minutes to do that. Throughout the year, but especially during the birth month of January and the national holiday, we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a pastor, activist, Nobel Peace Prize winner, and trailblazer during the Civil Rights Movement. He was one of the most prominent Black figures to create immeasurable change for America and pave the way for a more equitable future. Although the formal Civil Rights Movement took place over 70 years ago, the efforts of his actions and his inspiring words continue to be extremely relevant today during these ongoing times of racial disparity. The national holiday in 2023 will be celebrated on January 16th. Unfortunately, the focus has changed from that of freedom, justice, liberty, peace, love, equality, and racism to an emphasis on a day of service. These values and ideals are undesirable and uncomfortable topics of discussion for many as we struggle with the realities of today. Many of King's quotes are repeated daily by many and sometimes misrepresented. I offer a few that are quite relevant for the times in which we live. The first one that I share. Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. He said that as far back as 1963. Another quote, if we are to have peace on earth, our loyalties must become ecumenical rather than sectional. Our loyalties must transcend our race, our tribe, our class, and our nation. And this means we must develop a world perspective. This was part of a Christmas sermon that he delivered in Atlanta, Georgia in 1967. He further stated at another occasion, I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant. This was part of his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech in Oslo, Norway in 1964. Another one, if ever there was a time for compassionate understanding of the disaffected, it is now. If ever there was a period in our history when the dedicated commitment of citizens and organizations to work toward healing the urgent growing breach in our society, it is today. He said that in March of 1968. So as we look at our work as an equity commission, when we reflect on those decades since those kinds of words were spoken, they could very well be spoken today and be as meaningful as they were when he spoke them, whether it was in a sermon, whether it was an article, whether it was in a book, or whatever the passage might have been lifted from. And so we won't be back together again before the holiday comes and goes. So this is why I zeroed in on Dr. Martin Luther King. And in addition to these kinds of quotes, and there are literally thousands of them all over the internet. You just pick a topic and boom, out roll the quotes. But thinking in terms of what was relevant for us as an equity commission, that's just a few that I share with you. And I invite members of this commission to join me and the congregation of the New Life Baptist Church in a community-wide celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday on Monday, January 16th at 12 o'clock noon. We haven't had a community-wide celebration for King in many, many years. And so we're getting that back into the usual thing, but noon on the holiday itself. You'll see more information on that has an address and that kind of thing. But it's very pertinent, the ideals and values that he stood for as we're talking about a more just world for all people and our work in trying to make the city of Lacey as wholesome and as receptive as we possibly can for all citizens. So with that, that's my inspirational item for the evening.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
That takes us to our business items. We've got our usual strategic diversity, equity, and inclusion plan workshop. We've been working our way through this for the last year and it's getting closer and closer. So with that, Shannon.
Well, thank you, Chair Jackson. And like you said, we have been working on this for the full year. And today we are going to take a look at the last benchmarks and indicators, not to say that that is going to be the last time we will review those, but we have made it all the way through, the 4 goal areas, determining the strategies, and then looking at benchmarks. And so we'll continue on our journey as indicated in the packet, moving forward through step 4 to step 5. With the idea that we're going to be looking at reviewing, the content, so some additional text that's added that we've identified in the strategic plan in the draft, and then also taking that out to be reviewed by the city staff and departments, and then the community at large for additional comments and feedback that we can then take back to this group and take a look at the drafts for further revisions. So with that, what I'd like to do is jump right into the Jamboard and go over our last section, which is livability. And I think livability is a great conversation for us to have today, because as you look at the business items further down, we are going to be talking about community engagement efforts and initiatives. And a lot of livability is actually working with our partners, externally focused rather than internally focused here at the city. So I think it's a great connectivity with tonight's agenda. So with that, I will share my screen. And you all should have received copies of the Jamboard with the packets as well. And I know this is kind of hard to see, so give me just a second. So the first thing I just wanted to highlight was I took the feedback that was received during the last commission meeting, going back to our policies, and integrated some of the content that we discussed. So as an example, going back just for a second before we jump into livability, taking a look at acknowledgements and events, incorporating, city publications and other materials reflect the community. And then taking a look over at tracking community engagement events. So talking about the number of in-person, remote, and hybrid events that are held, the types of events, and to the best degree possible, any sort of demographic data that we might be able to get. And then also the location of events, with the idea that, we host events here at City Hall, but increasingly host more and more engagement events outside of City Hall. So places where, you know, people are already at to get additional feedback. In addition, I moved contracting over. Contracting was initially, as we'll see here as we get into livability, in livability, but you know, upon further review, that's really more about kind of our policies and programs. And so my proposal is to move that back to that section. And the strategy is to raise awareness of state and city contracting and procurement requirements and processes to increase opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses. And since the city is the lead in this, you know, particular section, really making sure that it was in our policies and program section, with the benchmarks as drafted being to support training and outreach events to raise awareness about contracting and procurement processes, use communication platforms to bring attention to contracting and procurement requirements. And then number two, the number of businesses based in Lacey that are on the Washington State Office and Minority and Women's Business Enterprise Directory of certified businesses, as well as MRSC's rosters, which is the location where the city can go to solicit for certain types of contracting, increases each year. Now, I did highlight MRSC because I need to confirm that this information is readily available and data that we could actually be able to get and take a look at. I do know that the Washington State Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprise Directory is very searchable, and you can really quickly look up, you know, businesses in Lacey for that purpose.
So what does MRSC stand for?
Municipal Research Services Center.
Okay,
So I wonder if we don't use Washington's electronic business solution webs that we are encouraging. Actually, that's what I'm working on, right? So the webs is free registration, and that's where we contact and inform all businesses whenever there's a contract opportunity comes up. And it's easy to register.
Commissioner Sauer, if you want to send me some more information on that, we
Absolutely.
can certainly make sure that that gets added to this. I do know that the city has used it in the past for RFPs and solicitations, but certainly we can integrate some language in there on contracting.
Yeah.
It's great. Any other thoughts or considerations on contracting and or acknowledgements? And for some reason, I apologize, I have this only in view only mode, so I can't put the sticky note down there, Commissioner Sauer, but I have made a note in my packet to follow up with you. So I'll make sure whatever comments do get migrated over to this document as soon as I have that capability. So then moving on to livability, our fourth and final goal area. Some additional information on this page would include existing city community programs and initiatives, and particularly focused on ones where there are joint partnerships with other organizations. So for some examples, the Housing Action Plan, which we discussed in detail with interim city manager Rick Walk a couple of meetings ago, you know, some of those joint initiatives could be added on here, as well as some joint initiatives with the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan and our Consolidated Action Plan for Community Development and Block Grant Funding. Also highlighting though some policies from the past, making sure that that gets some information and attention to the community. Some key terms include, you know, environmental justice, classism, cultural appropriation, discrimination, inclusion, oppression, othering, social justice, and restorative justice, which I know we're going to have a discussion on here. I've included a couple of definitions for us to return to. Thank you, Commissioner Blackburn. We'll have that conversation a little bit further tonight. So I'll pause here and see if there's anything else that the commission thinks would be good to add to kind of the preface to this section.
one question I had was about a resource directory. Does such a thing exist that come out of these various social service agencies such that say for instance, if a person asks me, who do I go talk to for some affordable house? I had a resource directory, I would know right where to flip the little page called housing and boom, you need to talk to so-and-so at this number at this address. Or I need help, I'm addicted, what programs are available for, where's childcare? Does such a community resource guide exist?
Chair Jackson, to my knowledge, not as comprehensive as you just stated. I do think that there are really good resource guides, for certain services in the community, but there's not necessarily a kind of clearinghouse for all types of services in one place.
I know the area something rather of aging is a really good aging for elders resource book.
And the Thurston
Yeah.
Mason Community Action Council, I've seen a resource guide they do in the past, but just the update and all of that kind of stuff. But as we talk about livability, and it could be in communication, it could be in a number of different places. But as I went through all this, I made a note to myself that just thinking of my own knowledge of the community, I know of no place I can put my hands on a community resource guide. And it's under social services, it's under a lot of stuff, really. So I thought maybe I was just missing it, but nope, it doesn't exist, a comprehensive
Not to my
resource guide.
Not to my knowledge, Chair Jackson, I do welcome anybody who might be listening to send me any information that they have, and that's certainly something that we could take a look at to further incorporate, whether it's, in this document or having a link somewhere on, the website, but yeah, I'd welcome more information. And commissioners, if you have good resource guides, whether if it's for particular social services, like you just mentioned, Chair Jackson, that would be great to send my way, and we can see what we can do to help get that information further out in the community.
Yeah, I just threw a topic out there as an example, and the way we're growing, as fast as we're growing, the diversity of our community, I would think a resource guide would be useful for churches to use, for organizations to use, even someone strolling in here to City Hall looking for some help on something.
I thought we had somebody that was putting a resource thing together. I don't know if they were putting it out to the community. But I thought somebody was putting something together within our group, maybe not one of the commissioners, but maybe one of the individuals from one of the gentlemen that was coming to the meetings a couple of months back.
Yeah, Commissioner Hart, we are working on the community connectivity analysis, and maybe at some point that could be a much more robust tool. Right now, it's really about community members to reach out to, not so much necessarily all types of social services. And that's certainly actually something that I sent out to the commission again in the email prior to this meeting to take a look at for our conversation coming up here under community initiatives and engagements, and something I've got pulled up too that we'll take a look at here when we get to that section.
Yeah, because I know we've got there's a couple of task force through the EDC, and then the BIPOC, South Sound BIPOC directory, which works in conjunction with the EDC for Thurston County Chamber. So, and I kind of think that we're kind of putting a few different efforts together between the three things that I'm kind of sort of involved in. Just a thought.
Oh, I think that's a great idea, actually.
It is, uh-huh.
Yes, I'm aware a lot of business resources, like, business.wa.gov has everything A to Z if you want to start a business, including government services to private, a lot of help. But everything else, business is very structured. There's some resource that I know of. There are a lot of organizations, but everything else, I don't know where to go. When I need a lot of stuff, I don't know where to go, to be honest. I'm trying to help some of the community folks that I know of. You have to just kind of like go from person to person. And so if we can create something like that, I think that'll be excellent. Like you go there, right? And then you get to find and be connected. That sounds.
But it's not, I see Commissioner Stallberg's hand was up, but it's not a task I'm necessarily requesting of the city. I'm just identifying it as we're talking about livability.
Mhm.
How it would help facilitate people,
Mhm.
English language learners, where do they go? Homelessness, homelessness, a homeless teenager, homeless single mother. I don't know where to send people, you could spend a whole bunch of time calling around to folk but if someone took on that task, one of the social service agencies, I would assume, it would be of use to everybody in a number of different ways, but that would make the city that much more livable for folk that are coming here. So I just toss it out as a topic, not necessarily something the city needs to do or this commission needs to do, but it's a missing piece as we get into these areas of discussion.
And that's a great point. And it's a missing piece that who chairs it or who heads it? Would it be maybe something that maybe the chambers can put into their thing? Because they have visitor guides and stuff like that. I mean, who would be the person to head that up if it's not the city or whomever?
Maybe we just say seek out, as far as our plan, seek out
Mhm.
that can produce a community resource guide and see what commerce we might can get, but just identifying the need without designating who.
Mm, mhm.
Commissioner Stallberg, your hand's still up. We can't see you all.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so as far as like a statewide resource guide, there's the 211 number that people can call. That's updated pretty regularly, but that's statewide. And there really isn't, that I know of, any local, like more local to Thurston County. I think that there's a lot of different groups that have their own individual resource guides, but yeah, 211 is the main one that people anywhere in the state can use.
So I was thinking in terms of a Thurston County kind of thing more than a statewide. That's really an arduous task, but
Yeah, and I think that there are
Countywide
Thurston County
resource guide.
resources within 211, but it's just that they look at resources in every county in the state.
that's all I'll say about that.
Chair Jackson, like I said earlier, if there is a resource out there and I just don't know about it, I welcome being wrong and please send it to me. But also, if you all know of resources, community or social services, please send them my way and we can take a look at it. Because I do think there is a potential, for, having that on our website somewhere and some, kind of guide to at least direct people. These aren't services necessarily that the city provides, but, making sure that we can connect individuals with what they are looking for. So I'd be happy to take a look at that and to come back to the commission for an additional conversation on that in the future. But please, if you have those resources, please send them to me. You can find my contact information if you go to the City of Lacey's website and go to the Commission on Equity page, and my email is listed there. So if there's any members in the community who might be listening, please feel free to send me any resource guides you might have as well.
Thank you.
All right, well, so the first strategy area was economic development. And so some of the proposed drafted benchmarks are listed here, and I will zoom up again. So the strategy is to support and enhance community workforce education, training, and entrepreneurship opportunities that reduce wealth inequities, support underserved communities, and ensure living wages. And so for some draft benchmarks and indicators, we have the city offers and sports programming that encourages youth, BIPOC, and women entrepreneurs. The second one is the city supports internships, apprenticeships, and youth career development. The third one is the city supports job readiness programs. And then Number 4, number and percent of businesses in Lacey that are minority owned increases. Number 5, number and percent of businesses in Lacey that are women owned increases. Number 6, number and percent of businesses in Lacey that are veteran owned increases. 7, explore ways to get involved in digital equity initiatives. And then turning to some community survey, rating of overall economic health increases, and scores are consistent across demographics, and that'll be consistent for all of the community survey ones. Number 9, rating of economic opportunity increases, and number 10, rating of workplace increases.
Is it digital equity? Is that like everybody has Wi-Fi, that kind of initiative to get everybody online who wants to be?
Correct, Commissioner Clay, and you know, some part of it's not just the ability to get online, but also the speeds at which individuals can access information online.
Okay.
And just like all of the rest of the jam boards, they will be open, you know, for the next 2 weeks. So certainly don't think that this is the only opportunity to provide some input or feedback on some of these strategies, as well as benchmarks as drafted. So as mentioned previously, I did move contracting into the policies, programs, and services section. So that takes us to housing and homelessness, and I will again zoom in. So the strategy is to support efforts to increase home ownership and reduce displacement, continue to implement and enhance affordable housing and homeless services with community partners. And this is something the city is a lead, but also really a partner in a lot of these activities. So the number of affordable housing units in Lacey and the greater community increases. The number of supportive housing units in Lacey and the greater community increases. The number of ADUs in Lacey and the greater community increases. Continued implementation of the Housing Action Plan. And so just as a reminder, the Housing Action Plan also has its own strategies. So being able to connect some of the benchmarks back to what is found in the Housing Action Plan. Support for programs that help older adult or low-income community members access or remain in housing continues to increase. And then for community surveys, rating of affordable quality housing increases, and rating of housing option increases, and rating of place to live increases.
So
From
when we
the,
say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
from the city's perspective, is there still a shortage of housing in Lacey, period? Are we still under for single family and multifamily?
Absolutely, Vice Chair, and I would say not just in the city, but in the county and the state as well.
Mhm.
But absolutely.
And so by these ratings, you take one survey and maybe on the scale of 1 to 10, you've got a 5. The next time you do the survey, we want to see it up to an 8. The next time you do the survey, you know. Okay, so that's the rating we're talking about. We want to
Yeah.
see that increasing.
Yeah, and Chair Jackson, this will certainly, before we go out for a community survey, this will certainly be something that we come back to the commission to kind of go through what our options are available and what types of questions we want to make sure that we include on the community survey. And, you know, when we have that conversation, there's gonna have to be a balance, right, of how many questions we can ask, not kind of scare people away from
No.
taking the survey. And also how many degrees you can have, right? So a survey from 1 to 10, we might want to take a look at maybe, modifying the options available. But yes, the idea would be that the survey would be taken every 2 years, so we could really track our metrics. And then also potentially, we could also track how we compare to comparable sized cities. So moving on to social services, the strategy is to provide and support culturally appropriate social services that meet the needs of the Lacey community. And for benchmarks, we have developed and maintained the community connectivity analysis, which is a clearinghouse of community stakeholder and affinity groups to be used by the city and other community stakeholders. So Commissioner Hart, we will be taking a look again at that community connectivity analysis here in a second. Second is to create a strategic city social service program that is transparent, consistent, and removes barriers to participation. Third is in partnership with local education institutions to advocate for additional funding for early childhood resources. Four is to continue to work collaboratively with community partners in the provision of social services. And then moving on to the community survey, the rating of health and social services increases and the rating of overall quality of life increases. One thing I do want to just take a pause and make a note of here, I'm sure the commission sees that in a lot of the strategies where the city is more of a partner, it's less of a kind of benchmark because we don't have direct control. It's more about how do we leverage partnerships or how do we advocate for items. So just want to highlight a note that, as we're looking through livability, as you can probably tell, there's less, percentages and numbers and more about how do we continue to work with the partners and build those relationships that we have.
Oh, brings me to a question of number 2, create a strategy city social service program. So that is, what is the services that the city actually provides? Or should we add the word partnership in that sentence?
That was I was gonna circle back to number 2 as well. I was gonna ask you to expand on that a little because that was not clear to me.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to expand upon that. And then I'd be happy to continue actually part of the question that I heard Commissioner Clay bring up. But currently the city does have a budget for social services, and a lot of the social services that are provided through partner organizations. So it's, about funding or
partners.
providing resources. However, the city does offer some direct services, whether it's through, the police department, for example, has a fund that they can use in, times of crisis to help people. Our Lacey Veterans Service Hub is another great example of where the city is really one of the primary supporters of the hub and also the initiator of creating that service in Thurston County and here in the city of Lacey. But then also we have a lot of different contracts with other service providers. So the idea is to kind of take a look at all of those services that are being provided and be much more strategic and comprehensive and also, transparent to other community members, who might be interested in social service access in the future for funding. So the idea would be to create a program that, people can get more information on and perhaps apply in the future for their own social services.
I had another thing is somewhere I think it would be good to spell out affordable childcare as one of the social services that we hold of value.
Which number would that connect to, Annie? Or is it a new number you're suggesting?
Yeah, well, maybe in the 3, advocate for additional funding for early childhood resources and affordable childcare. I mean, it would, well, unless, the city could have a childcare for their employees, but other than that, they could just advocate and help fund for citywide
So
childcare.
that's kind of like picking one out of many social services that we need to. Because then I'd like to put in like for immigrant service where people can, when they come here brand new, where do they go? Or what do they, they need that connection type of language need, right? Stuff like that. At least they should know that there's someone who can make that connection for you, the language wise. And
So just
On
to,
this one, talking about, number 3, talking about the partnership with local education institutions. It loops back in my mind, our whole conversation on language needs for newcomers, non-English speaking people. And so we talk about, our printed information from the city of Lacey and all the various, can we propose that in partnership with the local education institutions such as South Puget Sound Community College, St. Martin's College, here is a resource for you if you aren't a fluent English speaking person. At some point, there's a limit to what the city can do as far as how many languages everything can be printed in. So if the resource were in the community, not through the city, but in partnership with, in that resource guide, it would be something to say, if you're interested in enhancing your English language speaking skills, there are free classes offered thus and so on these days,
Yeah, to me, like I am, what I'm thinking of, what I'm talking about is before your education, you will need some sort of dedication to, you need to invest some time, right? And all that, but I'm talking about initially when people come first, before you even find out there is hey, there's something called community college where you can go for this language class and all this, even before that, how do you even know that there's such thing? So I'm talking about like, you don't have to print everything, right? And if they have contacted city, then you have a language line where you be able to have that person be able to communicate with city staff, because you have that service that and be able to say, hey, what is that you need? You can pretty much help the basic need. And then that should include, by the way, you could go to the community college or wherever these community organizations have services that you can go for furthering your language needs. So I'm thinking a lot of times they come into families or friends or somebody who's brought them in here. But then not everybody's, or there are people who are, so I just like to have that kind of service. I think that'd be.
Yeah, I think.
yeah, I know there are 2 different things here. Yeah, I wasn't talking about that one. I was
Okay.
specifically talking about the language thing where we are putting so much pressure on the city to meet the language expectations and language needs of people. Yeah, that's further down the road than the initial newcomer, that's initially trying to find their way. So
Initially.
it was in this sentence here, in partnership with local education institutions. That's where that came across my mind. What else can we pursue in those educational partnerships when it comes to not just early childhood education or whatever, but this huge language need that we have in the community?
and Chair Jackson, I think through this conversation, right, is that there are a lot of social service community needs out there, right? And that's again, kind of going back to number 2 about creating that program so that it is transparent and there is a process and people know what's funded. And, certainly I would think that, as we're looking at this process, that would be something that, comes before the commission for further conversation on, like, how does this align up with the established priorities for what is in the social service program? What kind of recommendations does this body recommend moving forward, right? So I think that's part of looking at why we need to take a deeper dive into how the city, provides social services across the board, so that, because there are a lot of things in the community that are needs and interests, and that certainly we want to provide a consistent way to access and get information out there on how the service, how the city funds social services.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the partnership piece and collaboration we talked about. I know like Snohomish County had an organization that takes new immigrants that were Russian and Eastern European, and they brought them in and helped them with their initial language in the community and services, and they worked in that program until they can move forward to formal education and other things. So here in Thurston County, do we have organizations that take on new Spanish speaking, population that come in, that people who may have come across the border and the governor of Texas bust them up here and drop them off? Is there an organization that can take those people and get them the initial indoctrination into the community to get them going, and then is there an organization that would take Korean or other, from other parts of the world that need that initial, guidance and help? Do those organizations exist in Thurston County, and then can the city partner with them? And if there's a funding issue, can we work with them to help identify funding, state, federal, whatever, to help them to get the people indoctrinated into the community? So that collaboration piece, I think, is important.
A couple of other items I just want to highlight, commissioners. Number one, Commissioner Sauer brought up Language Line, and that is certainly a resource that is available at the city right now so that people can call in and use their language of preference to talk to our service providers here. So that is out there, and I do welcome anybody to use that. That's there. But I want to go back to one of the questions that Commissioner Clay had, and that was about the kind of strategic vision, kind of outside of just the city's services. And that's certainly something that the city is engaged with the Regional Housing Council, with our, peer jurisdictions, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County, on working on, specifically, homeless services. And so we are taking a kind of regional and strategic approach to that. So I just wanted to highlight that as well, Commissioner Clay.
So I have a question regarding the big need, so homelessness, like you talked about. Is there an organization or someone that can come to a commissioner's meeting to say, here's the program for to fight homelessness in Thurston County? Here's what we're doing. So we have a good answer.
Absolutely, and that would be, our membership in the Regional Housing Council, and we can certainly look into getting a future Commission on Equity meeting. And that actually is a great segue to one of the points that Chair Jackson asked about earlier that I also wanted to highlight, which was, homeless individuals and where to point them to. There are really good resources in the community on that, and I will happily pass that out in the email and follow up to the commission meeting for more information. That is a resource that is out there and available. But Vice Chair Brown, we can certainly look at a future meeting focused on kind of homeless efforts in the community.
Yeah, just a visual, it looks like Lacey's doing something right, because when I ride around Lacey, I don't see a lot of homelessness. But as soon as you cross the border over to Olympia, it's rampant. So I don't, but I'm thinking it's a county initiative that's working this issue. So.
And Vice Chair Brown, it's all of the jurisdictions, again, are part of the Regional Housing Council and working on the issue. City of Lacey does have a really good website, which I'll send out to you, on some of the initiatives that the city is involved in. And that provides a good overview of, some of the services that we're providing, from our police department to our public works departments to our community and economic development department. So I'll make sure to send that out as well in the follow-up email.
Like the decision to turn the hotel into temporary housing for homelessness, and that is located physically in Lacey, but I'm sure that council to work together to make that determination.
Absolutely,
How that's
yes.
working, how that's coming about, moving forward. How is it unfolding? What are the plans and how is it unfolding? That would be really good, because that's the biggest question I get in the communities about homelessness. What do we do?
Let me ask that question a slightly different way. I don't want to belabor it, but what is Lacey doing differently from, say, Olympia, that we don't have that plethora of tents up and down the sidewalks and And Cliff is right, when you drive around, you know, you see homeless people panhandling on corners and stuff. But as far as tent communities and all that stuff, what are we doing? What are we doing differently that's not the case for Lacey? Is it a policy that passed? The resources going to, I know we're part of the consortium, but I'm just curious, and I don't want to belabor it, but Chris raises an interesting point.
Yeah, Chair Jackson, I think the best thing to do is let's get this on for a future meeting. But what I will say is we have had a really good community response unit in our Lacey Police Department, coupled with our mobile outreach team that has gone out into encampments that have been in Lacey and really tried to connect individuals with services that are available to them. And they have been very successful in what they have done out in the community. But I think, you know, to fully get kind of a good understanding of Lacey's response to homelessness, as well as, you know, other communities, what we're doing regionally or, you know, in different cities, we certainly can have a future, more extended conversation on that.
Okay, thank you.
I can see this create the strategic social service program. It just is going to include everything that we've talked about. It's a project in itself to create that, but to then list all these services and really show what we're doing and who we're partnering with. Yeah.
Yeah. In Commissioner Clay, it's really, you know, to get direction from the city council on what their priorities are, you know, and in any given year, this might be something that comes up on an annual basis or a biannual basis to help direct kind of what funding is part of that process, and to have future discussions like the one that we're having here tonight on, you know, all of the various social services and needs in the community.
Great, thanks.
So moving on to partnerships, and hopefully the
Um,
lights stay on.
Yeah, I was about to say my lights are flickering over here, so just in case we lose power.
I feel like it's always a commission on equity meeting. I think our first meeting, we did lose power here
Yes.
because of the
That's
heat,
right.
and now maybe because of the wind, hopefully that's not the case. But partnerships, what I do want to highlight is all of the above actually have partnerships as well as environment below. But the strategy is to coordinate and collaborate with local schools, government entities, tribal governments, nonprofit groups, and other community stakeholders to advance equity comprehensively in the community. And some, zoomed in too far. Some of the benchmarks are the number of organizations and agencies involved in city events and programs increases every year. And also the number of community events that are not the cities that the city is involved in increases every year. And the number of joint city community events, programs, or initiatives increases every year.
Yeah, that number 2, I think, is really important, non-city, you know, events. Is there a process for a community organization that's gonna do a major event to contact the city, apply for support or ask for partnership? How would they initiate that?
Great question, Vice Chair Brown, and I would certainly say if there are any community members who are hosting events, please feel free again to grab my contact information and send me an email. But as far as resources and funding, the city does have a lodging tax, and it's known as LTAC, so the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, and every year they review events that are out there in the community that are city and non-city. So I'll use the example of the Fred U. Harris Lodge. Their Juneteenth event this year is going to be receiving funding for 2023 from LTAC funding. So that is a resource that is out there and available for community members to apply for large events that might be happening.
It'll be nice, maybe we have a website, city's website where community members can just put them there and, you know, say we're having this event, whatever. Do you have like permit system or anything like that?
Yeah, Commissioner,
Perhaps that's the way to,
Commissioner Sauer, we do. There would certainly be, depending on the location and the size, there would be a number of permits that might need to happen.
yeah. I don't know, I mean, that way we get to know about it and, because do we even think about like even inviting the city? You know, things we didn't do that before, so I don't know if we are actually necessarily thinking about inviting the city. So if we want to include more, increase the number, we have to somehow let them know, hey, we are interested in learning about your event. So,
Yeah, and working through that Juneteenth event, that just opened my eyes to, you know, how easy it is to work with the city when you invite them in and you partner, you work with them. And their approach and their attitude as you move through that, like, wow, you could do this with other organizations and other events, you know.
this is the thing, right? It took like how many years? Because they've been doing it for, and of course, that was the first year that city was invited. So we don't really even think about inviting city and have more people get involved. We think like that's our segment or
Right,
that's
we-
our community event instead of let's open it up and
City.
see if people want to come, you know, because we didn't even think about those things. Because we do the Korean War Memorial thing, June 25th, right? And we always just do it ourselves and we bring, you know, we invite for Korean veterans, but we haven't really thought about it needs to be more community-wide event. Because we, like I said,
Progress.
so.
Well, I certainly welcome, again, anybody to reach out to me or send me any information on any community events, and I'd love to follow up with the organizers and the individuals to learn more about what that event is.
And I would think many of the organizations, they're not looking for money and funding, they're just looking for the support and the partnership and the
And
district
awareness.
communication.
Yeah,
that-
awareness.
The awareness, right, yeah, that the city can provide, yeah.
Great.
All right, so moving on to environment, which is our last area. Our last strategy here is to continue to support, protect, enhance, and restore the natural environment and eliminate health disparities so that all have the opportunity to achieve their full health potential. So for benchmarks, the environmental health disparity ratings in Lacey on the Washington Environmental Health Disparity Map improves over time. So I don't know if commissioners had an opportunity to take a look at this map, but it takes a look at environmental health disparities across the entire state. And it's a relative rating on a scale of 1 to 10. And so certainly if you haven't had the opportunity, I would recommend taking a look at this. I also think that this is this is a strategy where having our equity map will help in the future determine some, you know, in-house environmental as well as other benchmarks that could come up. So number 2 is to continue the implementation of the Thurston County Mitigation Plan, which outlines a strategic framework and strategies and actions for reducing local greenhouse gas and emissions. Identifying if there are any heat deserts in the community and explore ways to mitigate these conditions. Continue to support a healthy tree canopy in all areas of Lacey. Increase in identified levels of service for open space and natural environment preservation as identified in the Parks, Culture, and Recreation Comprehensive Plan. Continue to support local, state, and federal environmental sustainability and resiliency initiatives. So that when I say local, I mean city driven as well. And, you know, as soon as we continue to refine our sustainability programs, we'll have better benchmarks for that program specifically. But I also know there's a lot of good data and information available again at the county and state level that would tie into environmental sustainability and resiliency initiatives. Continue to provide support for septic to sewer conversion programs. And then moving to community surveys, the rating of overall natural environment increases and scores are again consistent across demographics.
Can we go back up to number 3? We're talking about identifying existing heat deserts. Do we have any food deserts in Lacey? People don't have access to fresh, healthy food. Or the nearest store is way away or whatever, but food deserts are a real issue in the country. And I just raised a question, heat and food deserts. Lacey's growing, so we have food deserts.
Food desert, where you might only
Don't
have
have
a
access.
little mom and pop that mostly sells bad food, high
Mhm.
priced food,
Processed
you
food.
know, you don't
Uh,
haven't. You're not in the
Transportation.
vicinity of a big grocery store.
You have to shop at
Fresh
AM,
produce,
PM.
fruits, vegetables, don't have access. So heat and food deserts, I would just, and if the answer is no, that no, we got it covered, that's fine, but identify if there are existing heat and or food deserts in the community.
And I heard Commissioner Sauer, you also mentioned transit, and I think that's also a good thing too of transit deserts, multi-fuel
We have that in
limits.
transportation, yeah,
Yeah.
access.
On number 4, the healthy tree canopy, I've heard at city council meeting, the public, statements and things talk about trees and how trees are being taken down. And I'm looking at all of the new development in my community. They wipe it 100% clean of trees. Then they build all those new apartment complexes and new communities. All the trees gone. And some of them are saying, oh, we're gonna have a green space for the families to play and that type of stuff, say right in the middle of the community, but all the trees are gone. When my neighborhood was built 30 years ago, they gave, options. You can pick a lot with no trees, or you can pick a lot with, they had groups of trees, like these many trees have to be together, but throughout my community, there are groups of trees. It wasn't just wiped completely clean, but in the new development, seemed like the developers just come in, done. We're not concerned with trees.
They plant new trees, but take a long time to create the carbon.
A canopy.
But is that legal to do that?
Yeah, they just put in as many houses they can, as close as they can,
So there are regulations on how many, trees be in a certain space. I think Commissioner Clay highlights a good point of, some of the size of the trees and the time it takes to develop into what was previously there. And that's certainly something that, we've taken a look at incorporating into our plan for tree preservation. Still a very valid point.
Yeah, green space is one thing, but trees is another.
Tree canopy.
Mhm.
And fruit trees would be nice too. That way people can have something to take from, I guess, if it was taken care of.
What was that?
Fruit trees.
Oh, fruit trees.
There also in this environment, the city doesn't build a lot of new buildings, but we've got this big police thing in the museum. Is there talk about building them green with they call it a LEED, LEED rating for them? I imagine they are.
So Commissioner Clay, yes, LEED is one. There's also several other kind of green certificate buildings. And certainly we're taking a look at making sure that all our buildings moving forward are energy efficient. But I think that is certainly something that we can, have some language in there too for a strategy of making sure that city buildings, we are making a really good effort right now to start the conversion of our vehicles, for example, to electric vehicles, but also, taking a look at, our energy within our own facilities as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Small,
Things so that they would be sustainable.
small climate pledge facilities.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Clay, I'll take a look too in Thurston County mitigation plan because I'm pretty sure that is a strategy that's in there, so I'll take a look at that language and send it back out to the commission.
We can just mirror it in here.
Well, and I do want to point out that we do have number 2, which is continue the implementation of the Thurston County mitigation plan. So certainly if it's in there, kind of just pointing and directing to benchmark number 2.
Right, right.
All right, well, moving on to the last portion of tonight's DEI strategic plan. In conversation over the last couple of meetings, there were a couple of definitions that we determined we wanted to take a further look into because they were not part of the OFM's glossary. And thank you again, Commissioner Blackburn. I did go back and take a look at BIPOC, and BIPOC is not in that glossary. So what I prepared tonight are 2 definitions, each per BIPOC and restorative justice. And so I want to start with BIPOC. I've got a definition from an organization that works on behalf of counties, as well as a definition from the Racial Equity Tools website. Both of those are accessible on the packet tonight. And I just wanted to check in with the commission and see about if there was a preference on the definition or some language changes they wanted to see before moving forward with potentially adding it to the glossary.
I liked them both and was trying to figure out how some parts of the second one could be incorporated in the first one. That last part they talk about, which helps to counter anti-Black racism and invisibilization of Native communities, to be incorporated somehow with a few words in that first one. But I think the definition helps a lot for people to understand why that term has come about.
I agree. I do like that last part in the second one, adding that to the first, maybe just prior to the last sentence, because the last sentence does talk about how this term is still evolving and being contested. Is that what that says? Contested with my glasses. Yeah, contested by some activists. So, yeah. Love that.
Great feedback, and certainly something we can take a look at incorporating into the 2 definitions.
Thank you for following up on that and doing that research.
Absolutely, that's what I'm here for. Thank you all for the great ideas and input.
Critical piece. Yeah.
So moving on to the second definition, and I've provided 2 definitions again on restorative justice, and one is from the ICMA, which is the International City Management Association, and then another one was taken from the University of Texas Austin Institute for Restorative Justice, which I provided the full link to that packet. Happy though to be pointed in direction for other definitions, but just wanted to check in with the 2 that were provided here.
Again, I liked elements of both, especially the 3 bullets down here, the 3 fundamental questions that restorative justice seeks to address. I think that would be a good addition to embed in that first definition. That's easy for people to understand.
You make it 100%.
We just come at the tail end. I think it would.
There we go.
Just let me know if you want me to scroll down.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the first one is really strong also. And just,
And to take the last part of the second one and just plug it in at the tail end of the first one. Those 3 bullet points.
You can show it.
But
Happy to do that, Chair Jackson, and I'll come back with some revisions for you all to take a look at. Certainly, we're going to continue to work on the DEI strategic plan, really taking a look at some of the additional sections here in the next couple of meetings with the intent that, again, we can start doing some internal review and then some external review here in 2023. I know this has taken a lot longer than I originally anticipated, but I do think, being intentional about this process is very, very important and very, very helpful. So I do appreciate, again, all of the feedback and comments and input this body has provided so far. And I look forward to the next couple of sessions for more.
great. So that takes us to item B, 4B.
And item 4B is a draft work plan for 2023 that would be reviewed with our city council during the joint meeting that is coming up. You'll remember we did a work plan for 2022. And just like the art plan that I reviewed with you all at the last meeting, I was very ambitious, and I am I am learning. It takes a little bit more time, and we don't have meetings every 2 weeks, so gotta take that into account when I'm looking at setting up a draft work plan for us to consider.
We like to really chew on things.
And I love it. I love it. It's great to do that. So I've provided a draft work plan, and I'm going to share my screen just to go over just very high level what it is. And the purpose tonight is to introduce it, see if there's any comments, questions, or things that you thought maybe were going to be in there or you'd like to see in there. And then we'll come back at the next meeting to kind of talk about what the joint meeting will actually look like. What I do want to say is the joint meeting is scheduled for March 9th, and we are going to be sharing that work session meeting with the Lacey Youth Council. They'll be doing their joint meeting first with the Lacey Lacey City Council, and then the Commission on Equity will wrap up the latter part of the work session with the Lacey City Council. So in the draft 2023 work plan, the first thing we have is just the background on the commission, as well as our commissioners, noting that, chair and vice chair are going to be changing tonight for 2023. Providing a list of the dates of appointments as well as the expiration, city staff meeting schedule, a link to the webpage to get more information, how the community can provide public comments, and then a review of the 2021 and 2022 activities. And this would be something, to go over with the council, some of the items that the Commission on Equity has worked on throughout the last year and a half. And then turning to the work plan for 2023. I've organized this a little bit different this year than I have in past years. Really focusing on quarters rather than on specific months, and then trying to focus on categories. So the categories are engagement, strategic plan, policy items, program items, and then events. And so you can see here in the first quarter, continuing to have informational meetings with representatives from local education institutions, and I will have a report on that here in the next business item. To hold a focus group per quarter moving forward, and then to participate in the Lacey Cultural Celebration. Continue to work on the strategic plan, moving into the strategic plan, and then going to policy items, researching and reviewing compensation opportunities for advisory bodies, and coming up with a recommendation to the city council. Continuing to work on a draft land acknowledgement and land acknowledgement policy with input from the Nisqually Indian Tribe and the Squaxin Island Tribe. Continuing to review the corporate sponsorship policy with the Board of Park Commissioners and creating a recommendation for the city council, and then reviewing other policy documents as they come up. I know there's going to be quite a few of them coming up, so making sure that we've got some space to take on those policy documents. Going on to program items, reviewing recommendations for the utility wrap project with the Historical Commission, and then going to events starting to plan the next Juneteenth celebration with the Fred U. Harris Lodge.
Can I ask a side question on
Yeah.
the utility rep project?
Absolutely.
How do we nominate people? Yeah, how does the nomination process work? And I got some ideas.
Well, Commissioner Clay, that's
Because we'll be reviewing the recommendations, but
a great question. And certainly if you want to send me some of your recommendations, we can incorporate that and any other commissioner as well. What we had planned on doing was coming back to you all with 15 potentials for review. And then the idea being moving forward with, around 12 of them for the first round. And then in subsequent rounds, because we know we've got more than 12 utility boxes and we want to continue to add the splash of history and recognition as well as art in the community, going out to the community and soliciting for additional ideas on, who we want to acknowledge and represent on future utility boxes.
I think this body could be really helpful in the nomination process because we're such a diverse group.
Let's speed this up, folks.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know. Yeah, we want to get out of here with the lights still on.
Yeah,
so-
and street lights working and, yeah.
So the idea again with the engagement would be that we would have kind of one informational where we'd be inviting people here, but then also hosting a focus group. Continuing to work on the strategic plan and then also going out for feedback with city departments. Moving on to policy items, finalizing the draft land acknowledgement and land acknowledgement policy. Researching and reviewing paid community liaison programs, and then reviewing other city policy documents. Going back to the utility reps, finally making a recommendation with the Historical Commission. And then, as I mentioned, the community survey, taking a look at the community survey options and what kind of questions. And then continuing the Juneteenth celebration planning. Moving on to Q3, you can see that the engagement activities remain the same with the addition of hosting another community engagement session in the future. And then continuing to work on the plan with going out to the community for feedback. Moving on to policy items, taking a final recommendation on the paid community liaison program to the city council. And then also starting the review of equity tools moving forward. For program items, making a recommendation on the community survey to move forward, and then participating in addition to planning the 42nd Juneteenth celebration. Moving on to engagement in the Q4, we'll be holding an additional, the 4th focus group, and then continuing to work on the DEI strategic plan with a recommendation to the city council for adoption. And then continuing to review and research equity tools and start the research and review of an equity map in addition to other policy items that might come up.
I don't prolong this, but back to the top, Q1, you talked about looking at compensation for compensation opportunities for advisory body members. What is the conversation on that? What are the thoughts?
So advisory bodies being one like, the Commission on Equity, our Planning Commission, our Historical Board, Park Board, Board of Park Commissioners, there we go, got that one in the right order. And really taking a look at, currently these are all volunteer positions. But knowing that, when you apply an equity lens on that, people might choose not to be a volunteer because they have to do other things in their life that they need to accomplish financially or maybe just time. So trying to see what opportunities might exist to be able to help increase individuals who might not get on advisory bodies because they have to go do other things with their time. And so taking a look at that, and this is something that is becoming much more popular in advisory bodies in municipalities. So for example, I know the city of Olympia has a stipend for all of their advisory body members. So taking a look at those types of projects, reviewing them and making, a recommendation for a direction for advisory bodies in the future.
Surprising.
Somewhere in the fourth quarter, we'll be needing to recruit new commission members. Should that be in our plan?
I think that's great, Commissioner Clay, and that's also really
Apropos.
something to think about. I mean, wow.
Well, let me just say that, Shannon, when I looked at this, I just shook my head and said, boy, she just went hog wild with this work plan for 2023. So, the work is here. It's here. We got work to do, people. Yeah. Thank you for putting in
Yeah.
writing it in front of
Yeah.
us so that,
Very good.
we're not just a group in name only. We got work to do.
Will the council be asking for a report out on what we did in 2022?
Absolutely, Vice Chair Brown, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we included that as part of the beginning of the work plan. So just like last year when we met with the Lacey City Council, we went over, what we did and then what we were going to do. And so we'll certainly take a look at dividing that amongst the commissioners for the March 9th meeting. But yes, we'll certainly want to talk about what you all did.
Yeah, hear it all here. I was just, my goodness, we did a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, very impressed. I was impressed with us.
Yeah, and people ask me, so what do y'all do?
Yeah.
What have you been doing? What's up, so that's the question we've been answering throughout the year.
Item 4C.
And Chair Jackson, I'm actually going to turn this back over to you because this was an item that you had asked to be included as part of this meeting, was just a future discussion on how we could go about increasing our community engagement efforts and initiatives. I can provide just a little bit of background from the last time I met with you all. You had requested, an engagement opportunity with our educators here.
Right.
And so I have reached out to representatives from North Thurston Public Schools, as well as St. Martin's University, South Puget Sound Community College, and Pope John Paul II, to see if we can get them on the January or February meeting. And so I'm hoping to hear back. I have heard back from some of them and they have said, yes, we absolutely would love to join. So I'm just hoping to confirm those details in the next couple of weeks so we can get them scheduled for a meeting here with the Commission on Equity in the first quarter.
And specifically for the January meeting, I was focusing in on the North Thurston Public Schools so they could update us on where they were with all the student talks and the student protests and the walkout and the request list that the students made of the district. Things just kind of fizzled at the end of the school year. The summer happened and here we are headed into 2023. What have they done? What's going on so that we can feel that our schools are being more responsible to the equity needs of our students? And so North Thurston School District was specifically what I'd like to see for the January. We were talking about December, then we realized that they're on winter break. So the January, and if the other institutions later on, that'd be fine, but specifically the North Thurston Public Schools for the January agenda, if not the director of equity or the superintendent or whomever, somebody that can tell us where things are in in that whole lingering kind of thing, because I know problems are still going on.
Yeah.
They're definitely still going on.
Can we say provide them 2 to 3 specific questions that we want them to answer in addition to anything else they want to cover? Like those things that Judge Jackson's talking about, and Atlantis may have some questions. If we could say, in addition to your presentation that you're gonna bring, hear, say, 2 or 3 questions that the commission specifically would like a response to.
Yeah, Vice Chair Brown, if you want to send some questions, I think that's certainly something that we could put together. And I know, community members as they come in would probably like to have some questions that they're going to be asked in advance. Going back to, I guess, I did invite North Thurston Public Schools and they are confirmed that they would like to come to a meeting. So I certainly will get that on the schedule, but I do think it would be a good nexus to also have additional educational partners to have conversations about, some programs that they're involved in the community, especially as we're looking, towards, livability and partnerships, and how the city might be able to take a look at ongoing efforts and connect, with different education institutions to continue equity efforts in the community.
And one of the things I'd like to ask all of them is, what are your equity efforts? Everybody have a director of equity, a DEI, whatever. What are your equity efforts that you are undertaking as an educational institution? And they can, I'd be curious to know that.
And other partnership opportunities, say, for us to work with them on what they're doing. Because we all have relationships in the community that we can serve as a bridge, or, in a way we could serve as helpers for them in their efforts.
So might it be possible to get North Thurston scheduled for January?
No, I will certainly try. I don't want to
Okay.
confirm quite yet, but
Okay.
yes, I think it is
Yes.
a possibility.
Okay, great, thank you. And as far as community engagement efforts, I had looped back around to the focus groups that we had talked about early on as we began the commission. And we did the listening sessions, the 2 listening sessions, but we didn't develop the focus groups. So as the year was moving on, I just wanted to see us get those back on our radar and began to get those scheduled and began to, as an equity commission, this is our outreach to the particular community constituents that we represent here. And just provide a mechanism for conversation, dialogue, input, whatever. And so here we are in 2023. And I'm certainly interested in the convening of the Black community. As soon as we possibly can schedule something like that. I'll work with you to develop that further. We have a new minister who is highly interested in community engagement. He's not just, doesn't see himself as a preacher in the pulpit on Sundays, but he sees himself out in the community, and we haven't had it to that degree before. So it's a whole different scenario now as far as space to hold the sessions and that kind of thing. So I can follow up with you on that and see what might be the earliest feasible time, even if we're a couple of months out, because the school district has a Black listening session on January 11th. And they've had it with the different ethnic groups. It was rescheduled. Is it January 11th? I think it's rescheduled for the 11th of January.
We can confirm the community cafe.
Community cafe, yeah, the community cafe. And they moved it to South Puget Sound Community College for space reasons versus the community center. So we just get it on the calendar, as this is and whatever other focus groups that different commissioners can help organize and schedule and structure as some specific strategies for this 2023 plan of work.
And so commissioners, I'm happy to work with all of you on getting focus groups scheduled for 2023. And again, per the plan, hoping to at least strive for 4, so 1 per quarter. We do have the community connectivity analysis. So just really quickly, I want to kind of go over what that is and how it might be a useful resource as we start to think about focus groups. But you all should have access to this, and if you can't access it, please let me know, and happy to take a look at why you might be having issues. But the idea with the community connectivity analysis was again to create kind of a clearinghouse directory so we could continue to do engagement as well as, spread information and news moving forward. So if you click over here on community connectivity analysis directory, this will take you to the current information we have. If you notice that there are groups that are missing, you can fill out a form here on this middle button, and that'll add it to the list. And that's something that the city can take a look at and get some additional information out. But just really quickly to show you the community connectivity analysis. We'll give it a second here. This provides us with kind of a quick sheet to go take a look at different organizations, nonprofits, and groups that exist so that we can, reach out in the future for additional focus groups, but also with the idea that we can send information out or create a kind of a place for people to access this information in the future. So just as an example, we've got education, and we've talked about a lot of education entities in the community. But we've got a number of different affinity groups listed here with the information that we can, again, kind of reach out for when we're looking to create engagement and focus groups. So if you haven't taken a look at this for a period of time, I'd recommend you take a look and see if there are any organizations that might be missing out there. And, like Chair Jackson just brought up, as we start to look to set up these focus groups, I'm happy to use this as a tool to help work towards getting more focus groups set up in 2023.
Thank you. I think that would provide more incentive for members of the commission to give some attention to that CCA as a communication mechanism, a collaboration mechanism, as a connector, and make sure, who we know and what we know is included in that. So thank you for that.
So just to be clear, are we gonna now target, say, the African American group for a meeting first quarter that we're looking at?
That's my suggestion.
Yeah. Okay,
At first quarter.
yeah, and I can work with you to
Okay,
coordinate
great.
that, yeah.
Anything else under item C? We'll go to item D then. That's an important item for the night, and while we still have electricity and power. Let's deal with that.
City of Lacey should pay the electric bill.
Pardon?
The city of Lacey should pay Puget Sound Energy, so the lights don't go on.
We have two officers in this, two offices in this commission, a chair and a vice chair. And I served as your chair for the first round of this commission. And it's a one-year term, which ends with tonight's meeting. And so we need the election of a chair and a vice chair to serve for the next year until December 2023. And then it comes back on the agenda again. So with that, I would take nominations for the office of chair of the Lacey Equity Commission.
I recommend Dr. Thurlow Jackson for the chair.
No, the whole deal is,
Spread it around.
we spread it around, and I appreciate that, though. I decline. Is there another nomination?
I don't know if you can decline.
I will nominate Cliff Brown, Commissioner Cliff Brown, for the chair.
Cliff Brown has been nominated. Are there any other nominations for the office of chairperson, chair? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Chair Jackson.
I saw your finger. Hearing none, nominations are closed for the office of chair. And Cliff Brown is the only nominee. He would be named by acclamation of this group. Anyone on the line I'm trying to peep up there to make sure I don't see a hand. Shannon?
Chair Jackson, if I could, there's one nomination If I could get a first, a second, and a vote, I would appreciate that.
Okay,
So I've got a first.
yes. So it was moved by Annie Clay that Cliff Brown be nominated as the chair. Was there a second?
I second.
It's been seconded by Kim Sowers. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Elena's, John, Christina, you all still there? I
I think
heard-
we all said aye.
Yes, I, sorry.
Said I.
Okay, I heard Makita, yeah. Okay,
I, sorry, I don't know if you heard me.
Okay. All those opposed, hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Let the record show. Yes, so then we move on to the office of vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Annie Clay, the vice chair of the Equity Commission of City of Lacey.
Annie Clay has been nominated. Are there any other nominations?
Well,
I actually decline. I think it's important not to have a.
Pardon me?
I think it's, as a white person, I think it would be important to have a person of color on the, for the chair and vice chair for now.
You have every right to decline.
Yeah, I
but don't
disagree with
agree.
that.
Yeah, it's
me
a
too.
commission on equity, so it's looking at all abilities, whether it's person of color, disability, you know, creed, gender, all of that is equality,
Yeah.
which is why it would be good to have a couple of different perspectives. But I understand.
I agree.
Yes, Amy.
Any other nominations?
I second that nomination.
Okay. It was
What
moved
about,
by Kim Sauer and seconded by Cliff Brown. Any discussion?
Mr. Hedgewood, would you be interested in being nominated as well?
Sure.
Who's that?
Second nomination.
Was
So
someone else?
Commissioner Hart asked Commissioner Hedgewood if they would be interested in being nominated, and Commissioner Hedgewood said yes.
Okay, so there are two nominees for the office of vice chair. Any other nominations? Any other nominations?
We need a second for John.
Is there a second for the nomination of John?
I second.
Did I hear Elena speak?
That was
Elena or
Christine.
That was me. I second. My connection might be kind of funny because my power's been
Christine.
in and out.
What was your comment, Christine? We didn't quite hear you.
for
Just
connections?
seconding
I
John.
heard that part, but what did she
Second,
seconded John? Oh, okay, okay. So we have two nominees for the office of vice chair, Annie Clay and John Hedgewood. So we'll take a vote. We'll take a vote. We have two nominees. Those in favor of Annie Clay as vice chair, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Who was that? John,
Yes.
Kim, Cliff, and I. 4, okay.
and Elena's.
Did I miss someone?
Elena's has her hand up.
Elena, you're voting or your hand up? You want to speak or what?
I'm voting.
I'm voting.
Oh, you're voting yes for what? Annie Clay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's fine. Okay, those in favor of John, say aye.
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 2. Okay, so Annie, you are the vice chair.
Thank you very much.
And your reason for you and John, the reason you declined where you didn't think a white person, John, you know. So, Lacey has lots of white people. Yeah.
There you go. Congratulations. Congratulations, Annie.
Equity for all. So.
Yes.
And thank you for the
Brown
wonderful.
and Annie Clay, Chair and
so
Vice
welcome,
Chair,
John.
2023.
Congratulations, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
I think the chair-elect just said that they were going on vacation for how long?
Yeah, 6 months, so.
I'll see you in January.
So that takes us to item 5, Commissioner reports. I just had a question in the publication we're gonna do where there's a statement from the city, a statement from the whatever. We had talked about that a couple of meetings ago, and I had started working on that statement as the chair. But should that come from Cliff now?
Well, Chair Jackson, still the chair for this meeting. I think it would be great to bring it back to the full commission for consideration and review at a future meeting.
But I mean, to turn it over to Cliff to write the statement, that's what I'm saying. I
I think you're getting work.
2 more days.
I do think, you know, the message should come from the commission, but I think it can come from the chair and the commission. I think it's very important, you know, this is the advisory body, right? It's not just a body of one, it's a body of
Right.
8. But I would be happy to continue to work with you and
Okay. It's a.
Chair-elect
publication
Brown
coming forward, so,
on moving that forward so we can review that.
Okay, super. Any other commissioner with a report of any kind? Okay, director report.
Real quick item, number 1, inspirational item for the January meeting.
Here to be January.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then I just want to draw everybody's attention to the upcoming meetings since we do have a couple of them. So we have our regular meeting on January 23rd. And then we'll also be meeting that Wednesday with the Park Board of Commissioners on the 25th to go over the corporate sponsorship policy. And then I know I had mentioned at the last Commission on Equity meeting that there was going to be a senior services for the South Sound presentation. However, that had to be postponed, and so we have rescheduled it for February 16th. And I know I've got Chair Jackson and Vice Chair Brown and Commissioner Hart who are going to be participating in that presentation. And then the last item, the joint meeting with the Lacey City Council is no longer tentatively scheduled. It will be March 9th. So we do have a number of meetings coming up. So I just wanted to make sure that you all put those into your calendar as soon as possible.
And the cultural celebration is what month?
The cultural celebration,
That is May? May
March,
Oh, March, okay. Okay,
March 4th, I think.
okay.
Let me see.
So we have all that in the agenda packet with the dates that you just said.
Yes, on the agenda. One other thing I wanted to say, and I'll just make this as my parting comment, outgoing chair here tonight. One of the things that I think we all had looked forward to when we signed on to this commission was getting to know one another, developing relationships, and all of that kind of thing. I would hope that in 2023, we have better in-person attendance at these commission meetings because we can't connect, can't interact if we aren't, so I just tossed that out there that a lot of nights we've had to go to people virtually to have a quorum even before we could proceed. So just think in terms of the commitment we all made over a year ago. And the in-person once a month meeting, I think is very critical to the work of this commission. So with that, I would say that nothing else to come before the group, then we stand adjourned. Do I see a hand up there?
We're previously 2 hands, but
Alana's?
Yeah, I had my hand up there. That was a mistake. I lowered it. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
And
you're welcome.
I wish you all a happy new year.
Yes. Happy, safe new year. Thanks, guys.
You,
Well,
to you.